Welcome everyone to our War on the Mind conference about mental health in Palestine and Israel. So I'm very, very pleased to welcome you here today. This is an event, a very important event that I've been wanting to organize for a long time. So I'm very happy to be here with you all today. First of all, I'd like to say a few thank yous. So first of all, thank you to all the speakers who have joined us. Some of you at very short notice. So it's fantastic to have you with us, and I really look forward to hearing your presentations. I'd also like to thank my team, who we've worked really closely together. So first of all, Martin Kemp, who's our partner for this event, from the UK-Palestine Mental Health Network. And Dee from the Balfour Project, who's the conference coordinator. And a final thank you to the Balfour Project, who are kindly hosting us on this webinar today. So I'd like to say a few words to start about how the idea for this project came about. So I've been involved in Palestine solidarity for a very, very long time, since childhood really. And in the area where I live, Bradford and Avon, I've become involved in the local solidarity group, Bradford and Avon Friends for Palestine. And besides that, I'm also a mental health worker. I work for a mental health charity called Together for Mental Wellbeing. And for a very, very long time, I wanted to combine these two aspects of my work. And because I noticed that the subject of mental health in Palestine and Israel wasn't often discussed. It was, often like the events and the sort of political situation, but the impact, the psychological impact on the people was very rarely discussed. And I thought that was really missing from the conversation. So I thought it was important to bring mental health workers together who are involved in the region, Palestinians, Israelis, and international mental health workers who've been involved in the region. So this is really, I'm so pleased today that this is happening and that I'm with you all. So as you all know, today is Nakba Day. And there are lots of commemorations, vigils, marches happening all over the world, including here in the UK, and also commemorations happening in Palestine. So it sort of brings, it kind of brings a context to this event. And of course, if there's one case where you can't separate the subject from the context, it's the case of Palestine. So for those of you who aren't aware about the Nakba and the recent events, I'll just do a quick run through just to give a little bit of context today. So the Nakba, it's Arabic for catastrophe. So what the Israelis call, Independence Day, like creation of the State of Israel, which is a day of celebration for them. In Palestine, they call the Nakba, which is basically when the ethnic cleansing started, villages and towns started to be emptied out to make room for the new State of Israel. So people were forced to leave their homes and became refugees. And the Palestinian the largest refugee population nowadays is the Palestinians. So so they were forced to leave their homes, and they're still waiting to return to this day. And just bear with me. So the people who were expelled in 1948 have kept the keys to their home in the hope that they will return, and the key gets passed from generations to generation. And the right to return is enshrined in international law, and to this day, this right of return hasn't been implemented. So a lot of the Palestinians now living in the West Bank, East Jerusalem or Gaza are refugees. And of course, also the diaspora around the world of Palestinians living in other countries, such as Britain and the United States. I think one of the things that's really important to be aware of is that the Nakba isn't a historical event in the past. It's very much ongoing, it's continuing. So Palestine is still being ethnically cleansed to this day. And you will see here that, you know, the so-called Palestinian state, there's very little room for it on this map. It's because the area designated for a Palestinian state originally is being encroached on by settlers, and they're trying to make a Palestinian state impossible, an impossibility. So I was aware that I would be speaking about the Nakba today at the conference, but there's been a lot of events happening in the last week, in the last 2 weeks, that have brought the situation into even sharper focus. And there's a real crisis going on at the moment in various areas of Palestine. So first of all, you'll have heard about the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, which is it's a Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem, and it's basically people are being evicted from this neighborhood to make room for Israeli settlers. So it's ethnic cleansing and the Nakba happening under our eyes as we speak. Then shortly after the evictions, there was so it was Ramadan. Ramadan just finished a few days ago, and during the holiest night of Ramadan, the Israeli forces invaded the mosque while people were praying on the holiest night of Ramadan, and violently expelled people from the mosque. There were many injuries. This was to make room for a far-right march in Jerusalem, the March of Flags, basically far-right extremists marching through the old city. Then shortly after, as a reaction to the events at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Sheikh Jarrah, there was in Gaza, Gaza reacted to this event, and of course Israel retaliated very, very, very violently by sending huge bombs. So the people of Gaza have now been being bombed several nights in a row, and there's been many of these incursions over the years. But many people from Gaza are saying this is the worst they've ever experienced. So absolutely horrendous what's happening in Gaza now. Civilian high-rise buildings being destroyed, women, children, families. You know, the number of dead is rising every day. As an important context to this as well, it's important to remember that Gaza is basically an open-air prison. People can't leave. They have no access to clean water. They have very little access to electricity. It's basically a huge. It's just an open-air prison camp, so people are living in terrible conditions. And so when you hear in the news that you know, there's been a reaction from Gaza, it's important to keep that in mind, that people are living in intolerable conditions on the Gaza Strip. So so you'll be aware that a few of our speakers are speaking to us from the region. So they're very much right in the middle of this situation. So it's important to bear that in mind. Also, when you think that, you know, when you hear their presentations. So, for example, Mohamed Al-Tawil is from Gaza. His family, friends, and his team in Gaza are being affected by the situation in Gaza. Samiha and Asrar are from the Jerusalem area, working in Jerusalem. And Asrar, for example, yesterday was helping her community deal with the trauma of what's happening in Jerusalem at the moment. So, you know, these are things that they're dealing with, mental health situations that they're dealing with at the moment. Another one of our speakers, Maria, her clinic in Gaza was destroyed this week. Thankfully, her team survived. They're sheltering, trying to keep safe, but this is the situation that's happening now in the ground. There are also the challenges of the time differences. So we have speakers from all over the world, and so our speaker, Dr. John Seuss, was speaking to us from Vancouver, and it's very early in the morning. I think it's 2 in the morning or something in Vancouver at the moment. So he's woken up in the middle of the night to take part in this conference. So there's a lot of personal commitment and passion behind this project, and it's fantastic that we're all able to be together for this very important event. One last note, we will be having a message directly from Gaza just at the beginning of our first break. Dr. Yasser Abu Jami will be speaking to us directly from Gaza with a very important message from us. He's dealing with the events right now. His family is being affected by the bombings as we speak. He's a psychiatrist working in Gaza at the moment, and he'll be speaking to us directly from Gaza. So thank you, everyone, and I'm very happy to be passing the mic to Martin, who will be opening the conference on behalf of the UK-Palestine Mental Health Network.
Hi there. Yes, I'm Martin Kemp, and I am delighted to be welcoming you today on behalf of the UK-Palestine Mental Health Network. I want to start by saying, you know, as we see this horrific violence unleashed against the people across historic Palestine once again, that we're honoured to stand alongside the steadfast resistance of our Palestinian colleagues and friends in their ongoing struggle for freedom, justice and equality. I am really pleased to be here, but I have to say that I deeply regret not being with the throngs out on the streets of London today, and to feel their energy and shared commitment around me. I'm imagining that the demonstrations taking place around the world will be watched by many Palestinians online, seeing that they don't stand alone at this moment. We hope that this conference will be an expression of solidarity, a learning experience, and a preparation for action. When Mohamed Al-Kurd, a community activist in Sheikh Jarrah, said in a recent interview that we could help by strengthening the BDS campaign, I think we understand what that means. It's clear. Then he added, "You can help us by understanding that Sheikh Jarrah is a microcosm of Israeli settler colonialism in Palestine." This is less obvious, but I think he's right. We can only be effective if we frame the situation accurately. Without this, you get the liberal wringing of hands that you can read in this morning's Guardian, in the editorial by Jonathan Friedland. Lots of despair and anger, accusations against all sides, but no analysis, no historical perspective, no understanding. The war on the mind impacts both on the occupier and the occupied. In this case, it gives rise to a pernicious anti-Palestinian racism within Israeli society and its supporters, whereby it's those subject to oppression and terror who are made to be the terrorists. I imagine a vicious cycle here, where the danger of feeling shame and guilt is evaded by demonizing your victims, and this then feeding a paranoia that results in further atrocities, and these crimes intensifying the need to demonize the other further, and so precipitating more bloodshed. The state's preference for coercion and violence, destruction and eviction, of course, leads to collective trauma and grief, to psychological damage of many kinds. But within settler colonial situation, the mind itself is also a direct and conscious target. The psychological damage and trauma that is routinely visited upon Palestinians is not simply collateral damage. The assertion that the Palestinians are not a people and therefore have no claims on the land requires an assault not only on bodies and property, but also, and perhaps more crucially, on spirit, on the sense of purpose and entitlement, on the hope for freedom and the belief in a meaningful future. It means an assault on Indigenous culture and a denial of history. Attention to the detail, the persistence and the cruelty of the administration of the occupation can, I think, support no other conclusion than that the State of Israel works assiduously to attack Palestinian identity and selfhood. The war on the mind has its international aspect too. The settler colonial state depends on its international backers, the USA in particular, but also the European Union and other powers. And here a real battle over hearts and minds is taking place. If we include in our idea of the mind the pursuit of the truth, the right to hear all points of view, and to make up our own minds, the importance of giving things their correct names, to use the right language to describe our world, and the right to explore what's happening without fear of being smeared and bullied, then a war on the mind is being waged too in this country and other countries around the world. Over recent years, that offensive has been successful in spreading confusion among many progressive people, making them anxious and fearful of speaking up. The sad and distasteful manipulation of memories of the Holocaust and the insistence that promoting equality and justice in Palestine is anti-Semitic are further expressions of this attack on the mind, which has ravished our political culture and is now seeking to throw a similar cloud over our educational establishments. Our conference today has set itself the task of both knowing something about the war on the mind in Palestine itself and of strengthening our activism and solidarity work in the UK and elsewhere. So I want to finish by talking about the work of the Mental Health Network. The network was set up in 2014. Our intention has been to raise consciousness of people within the mental health community about the true nature of Israel's intentions towards the Palestinian people, to reverse the dehumanization of Palestinians by encouraging direct person-to-person contact between British and Palestinian clinicians, and to encourage everyone to consider their response to the call for boycott, divestment and sanctions made by Palestinian civil society in 2005. In doing this, we think we're fulfilling our responsibilities as both citizens and mental health workers, but it's still controversial work, shocking to some, and we find a number of strategies used to try and silence conversation about Palestine and apartheid Israel within our associations. It's too controversial. It goes against a professional ethic of neutrality or being apolitical. It's against the rules laid down by the charity commissioners, etc. But it does, unfortunately, distress people who are emotionally invested in the status quo in Israel and in Zionism as an ideology, becomes grounds for asserting or fearing that to speak about Palestine is anti-Jewish. We try to answer these objections and to insist on the necessity of discussing the situation as an ethical priority. The objective of the networks is not to contribute directly to the development of mental health infrastructure in Palestine. There is a need to support the work of Palestine's many accomplished professionals, but there is another task here, another responsibility, which is to educate and shift public opinion. While words are not sufficient, beginning conversations about Palestine and encouraging an open debate in which no views are excluded is an important and effective means of supporting the struggle against colonialism. We need to get the message across to our colleagues that there's no such thing as neutrality or an apolitical position in relation to such extreme injustice. Over recent years, the UK network has been joined by sibling groups in the USA, Ireland, France, and South Africa, with people interested in forming other networks in other countries. And we're all linked to the Palestine Global Mental Health Network, to which several of our speakers today belong. Strengthening our links with colleagues within Palestine and with like-minded colleagues around the world has been one of the real rewards of undertaking this work. A couple of years ago, the networks launched the Mental Health Workers Pledge for Palestine. We'd be delighted if all those with a role in mental health who haven't signed would do so. We're hoping that you'll find the link being put in the chat. The external networks are about to launch a new initiative, which we have named the Do No Harm letter, that we shall be doing our best to distribute to all of our professional associations and members of those associations, charities and others working in the field. The letter urges that adhering to the request that we do not normalise Israeli society, consistent with the guidelines issued by the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions campaign, is also consistent with our professional ethics. It's an appeal to join a form of non-violent resistance made with clear objectives in mind to contribute to the struggle for racial justice and equality, and also bringing an end to many specific policies that routinely inflict psychological and physical harm on Palestinians. I think that psychologically, the BDS movement shares some characteristics of the International Criminal Court, introducing a moral, law-based approach that has been lacking in Israeli affairs for decades and to everyone's detriment. Please make sure that you're on our mailing list so that when we release this letter, you will receive it. And we ask for your help in distributing it further and beginning those conversations in your own workplaces and within your own professional bodies. We have to be hopeful that out of the atrocities now being committed and coming hard on the tail of the reports by B'Tselem and Human Rights Watch confirming Israel as a criminal apartheid state, that we regain the ground that's been lost and take back the initiative. It feels to me that the solidarity movement has gained new strength in recent days and new confidence. First, because the extremist nature of the Israeli regime has again been brought home to the whole world. And second, because it feels as if a new spirit might be invigorating, animating Palestinian communities themselves. We cannot tell how things will unfold. These communities are in a perilous situation. Yet on this occasion, Israel seems to have undone much of the work it had previously achieved in dismembering Palestinian people. There appears to be a renewed sense of unity, identity, and purpose. We hope this will be sustained. We believe that such resistance is, in a very real sense, a means by which the collective mind recuperates from the damage it has sustained in this ghastly war on the mind. Thank you for listening. I'll now return you to Samiha.
Thank you, Martin, for opening the conference with such, with such a very powerful opening. So I'd really like to welcome our first speaker. I'm very happy and proud to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Mohamed Altawil. He's from Gaza. He was expelled in 1940. His family was expelled in 1948. And then he grew up in a refugee camp in Gaza and became an expert in trauma therapy. He now lives in the UK. He's a practicing psychologist in the UK and also lectures at the University of Hertfordshire. He's also the founder of the Palestine Trauma Centre, which does wonderful work in Gaza, building resilience within families, children, and communities, helping communities to withstand the traumas that they're experiencing. So absolutely wonderful projects that they do. So I'm very, very proud to welcome you, Mohamed. Mohamed will be co-presenting with David Harold, who is a writer and teacher and chair of trustees at the Palestine Trauma Centre. And I believe that Mohamed's daughter is with us today as well. So it's probably our youngest speaker here today. So it's absolutely brilliant. And over to you, Mohamed and David and the young lady whose name I don't know, but I'm sure she'll tell us.
Yeah. Thank you, Samiha. And thank you for arranging this conference. It's really important to have more conferences like this to show the problem and the war on the mind, the Palestinian mind, and since long time. So thank you so much, and thank all my colleagues, David and Dr. Omar and Ibrahim. And also I would thank the attendants who come to this conference. That means like this, just not supporting the Palestinians, they support the freedom and the justice. Just want to say in the beginning, yes, like today is the 15th of May. It's a very important day for the Palestinians, for their memory. It's a Nakba. It's the disaster happened to the Palestinians since 1948. And this disaster is still the suffering of it and the consequences of it is still ongoing. And you can see today the war on the mind, the war on the houses, the war on the trees, the war on every Palestinian things in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, inside the Palestinian, in the 48 inside the occupied Palestine, in Gaza, in West Bank. This war is like, it's a criminal, and it's like, no, they don't think about any right for the Palestinian. And the bad things now, when we hear some from Europe or from the United States saying Israel has the right to defend themselves. Okay, if you look now that the people who died and killed, it's in the Palestinian side more than 150 and more than 1,500 injured. In the Israeli side, just 9 Israeli killed and about 70 or 90 injured. So no comparison. And they use like they call like burn land, burn earth. They use this mechanism and this technique to use a huge fire against the Palestinian. And why all of this? When some sound and voice saying it's Israel has the right to defend themselves. What's about the Palestinian? They don't have right to live. They don't have right to exist. They don't have right to resist. This is completely unfair. There's no justice. And now generation after generation, they have this trauma. And when I speak to my colleagues and my relatives there, look for like from last war, 2014, now there's a new generation. Their age below 6 years. When we speak to them and to their parents, they don't know what is going on around them. Why all this happening? It's very scary and make these people like still living and re-traumatize them again and again and again. It's ongoing. And all of this, it's really unfair and make it not easy for us to say, okay, today is the Nakba, to think and to have this event. And 73 years, why this is happening and it's still ongoing. There's no right. People, they want to live in dignity and freedom. And you can see all of this suffering. And the Israeli, they don't think and they don't care about the international and the human rights and the international law. And now this is happening now on the social media. Maybe before we've been lacking of the news, but now there's the social media that can tell the people what exactly happening in Palestine. When this will stop? It's a big question. Now 73 years now we are under this suffering. Our families being uprooted from Palestine, from the old villages. And now still, like yesterday, give you example yesterday, there's one family in Al-Shati beach camp, beach refugee camps. Some of these families, run away from this bad attack and criminal attack or terrorist attack on the civilian, and they went to other houses. The Israeli bombed 4 stairs, big building, and still today, they still try to rescue if there's any bodies still alive. You know, there's one baby, like I can't remember how many months she is. She's the only one survivor from the big family, extended family. They're living in 4 like stairs. It's a big shock. So now this is just, I want to introduce my people and the team with me, and they will start with Nagam to tell us about, she already put her voice and come to editing the video, which is about the children. She is going to say some things to you about the children in Palestine. Okay, now.
This video describes the traumatic events of the narrator and their friends. We see these events happening as we speak, and not just from the 14 years of siege mentioned and the long history before that, but as you all know about the humanitarian crisis currently happening in Palestine. The children, not just in Gaza, but in the rest of Palestine, are victims of the airstrikes and violence. Many, if not all of them, have been extremely traumatized by these events. The narrator describes their house shaking every time a shell falls near. But it's not just the house that's shaking, it's the people inside too, and the children who struggle to sleep and they wake up with nightmares many times during the night, and they struggle to have a childhood like any other child in the world. The lack of human rights for Palestinians extends beyond just those for adults, but the children who are forgotten amongst the never-ending conflict. Just because they can wake up the next day and try to continue with their life amidst the rubble and destruction, it doesn't mean that deep inside there isn't an innocent child who is scared and traumatized but forgotten about. With platforms such as this, we hope to raise more awareness and make a difference, even if it's small.
Thank you, now. And now we just have some voice from the people in Gaza. We start with Dr. Omar, the psychiatrist in Palestine Trauma Center in Gaza. Dr. Omar, yes?
Yes, hello everybody. You hear me?
على صوتك يا دكتور عمر شوي.
Okay, you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I am living here, of course, in Gaza, in one of refugee camp. We are under strikes now since 1 week. This is practically the fourth war on Gaza. Of course, we have many casualties, mostly are civilians, included children, women. This is awful, really. We are since 7 days, day and night, under Israeli airstrikes. It is really a horrible situation. Most sufferers here are children. They are suffer from different traumatized events. For example, fear, horror, anxiety, directly and indirectly, through hearing bombardment all night and daytime, and through watching and TV, hearing stories. Really, it is a horrible situation, and they are exposed to these traumatic events, and as a result of these events, they will suffer of different psychological problems, anxiety, PTSD, fear, some problems of behaviors, and this is this suffering maybe will extend in their life. For example, after some years, they will have some problems. There's some of these problems start to begin now, and some others problem will be later. And we hope this situation will end soon, because really it is very bad conditions here in Gaza. Now, this moment when I am talking with you, there is some bombing very far by airstrikes, and all children here fear of fears, and really is very bad situations, and most people are fear of their children, their families, and everyone here afraid of exposed to some aggressions, and they have very bad experience here in Gaza. This experience come from last wars, and they knows what the meaning of wars here. They knows what's the consequences of these wars, and we hope it will finish soon.
Thank you, Dr. Omar. Ibrahim, can you just give us in 1 minute and a half some just insight from your side? How is your children in a personal base, how they are coping with this ongoing attack on Gaza? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you for this conference to make the world hear our voice in Gaza. Actually, I don't know from where should I start, as a parent or as a PTC worker. As a parent, my timeline on Facebook or on all social media, including me, we are starting to get fear that the daylight has been over and the dark has been started. All these things happened also on the mother tongues each night. Shall our children sleep at the same room so we die together, or we should sleep in a different room so we will increase the chance at least one of our children will be alive? All of these things happened after that. Maybe 4 or 5 families has been fallen from civilian registry. All of them are die. Yes, today morning, they attacked a civilian in a beach camp, and the only survivor, girl with 11 months, I think. What I can say more? Also, when I think about my girls, when she asked me what we have done to have life like this, I don't know how I support her resilience while I'm weak. So the attacks everywhere, they are attacking civilians. No one is safe. I don't know where's the international community. Yesterday, the doctors confirmed that the IOF using a phosphor bombing. Yesterday, one of the worst scene ever. One of the doctors received transformed children, and they found their 2 children has been died. The situation is worse than 2014 war, 2012 war. I hope this can be end soon. As they said today, there will be a ceasefire. I hope this can be happen today.
Ibrahim, thank you so much for this insight from Gaza. And now we're coming back to the to David Harold, the chair of Palestine Trauma Center, UK, and one of the most and great supporter, and with his colleagues and trustees in the UK. And with this, I would like to thank all the supporters in the UK and Europe, everywhere. Their voice really make us still resistance, still an increase and strengthen our resilience. So thank you so much for all this support to us and to the Palestinian and to the justice and the freedom and dignity cause. Yeah, David, thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed. Excuse me. I think it is very difficult to continue on some sort of academic level or using that kind of academic language after hearing the raw experience, the present and ongoing experience. And as Dr. Omar said, this is by no means over, and I'm talking about weeks and months. We're talking about families who are somehow going to have to recover and survive on a day-to-day level, an ordinary level, for weeks and months to come after the caravan of media has left. And I was very grateful to hear Ibrahim talk about the position of parents and their sudden feeling of disempowerment at this time. And this is where the therapy work comes in, to re-empower the parent in the home, to produce the network of support if we possibly can. And we certainly can in this country if we try. We're doing it at this conference right now, let's face it. And we should have many more meetings like this now. It is so easy using Zoom, because all of that provides the support that these people need. And I just want to tell my dear friends Omar and Ibrahim, and those that I've not managed to reach on Facebook, that as far as PTC UK is concerned, its trustees have you in their hearts and in their actions. I'm going to risk going on to this more academic level, if that's all right. Mohamed will interrupt me when he feels he should. We're very good at interrupting each other on occasions like this. Oh, Mohamed, are you showing the presentation, or am I?
From your end, it's really good. But if you have any problem, I will intervene.
That's right. I'll try, and then if I fail, you can take over. So I just want to draw attention, first of all, to the title of our presentation. Trauma, resistance, and resilience. We were asked to talk about resistance and resilience, and Mohamed pointed out to me how important the order of those words is. You start with resistance, and it leads to resilience, and I hope that what we show is going to kind of reinforce that point. I'm going to start with a reference to a book which I will put in the chat later on by Alistair Crook. I hope you've heard of him. There is a website of his which is called Conflicts Forum, and he wrote a book called Resistance, the Essence of the Islamic Revolution. He was talking about 1979 and the revolution in Iran, but he also wrote about resistance in Palestine and his special knowledge of Hamas, which I think is extremely important because we don't want to get trapped in the language of condemnation and counter-condemnation. What I hope we are going to do in this conference and in this presentation is to be descriptive and to learn from that descriptive approach, to become empathic with perhaps views that we find a little bit disturbing in order to understand better. Alistair Crook wrote, resistance is a tool to control and direct the powerful feelings unleashed by oppression and humiliation. It begins as an act, and this is very important, praxis, action, an act of refusal. And this list I find very useful if we think about resistance. We're not talking about what those acts might be, we're talking about the feeling behind them. And incidentally, I emphasize feeling rather than thought. That fits in with what Alistair Crook is saying and how we operate really at PTC. A refusal to be subservient to a future set by others. Think of that in relation to yourself and your own life, your own future, your own power of decision making, and all of this begins to make sense. A refusal to accept inferiority imposed on our identity. A refusal to normalize injustice. A refusal to take force and power as dominant considerations instead of ethics like rights and justice. And if you are coming from a religious Islamic position, then you have that priority. Rights and justice are more important than considerations of force and power and politics. Finally, as actually quite a lot of Palestinian literature sort of tells you, a refusal to die in silence. I want to look perhaps at resistance as a kind of rebalancing, and I've once again got this from Alistair Crook's book. He quotes a Palestinian prisoner, and I'm going to read this out because I just think that's the only way of taking it in. In abnormal conditions, says this Palestinian prisoner, talking about himself, his actions, his motivation, it is normal to resist. You are obliged to resist if you want to live with dignity. These are ordinary qualities in an ordinary person. If I stopped feeling the shock and the trauma of people, if I stopped feeling the sadness of human beings, any human beings, this is a nightmare for me. To sense the pain of humanity is the essence of civilization. It is the measure of my will and of my refusal to surrender. The will is the essence of the rational person. Action is his physical sense, emotion is his spiritual sense. Once again, notice the emphasis on emotion, not on thoughts and political thinking. But I am reminded of that famous Gramscian phrase, the optimism of the will here. Let us just have a look at the way in which we can contextualize what is happening now. And one very important thing is the sense of reiteration. The children who are suffering today and over the last few days and will for some time to come are experiencing what their parents experience and what their grandparents experience. And you can see that, the great list of wars and invasions and intifada responses. This is intergenerational trauma that we are dealing with. Secondly, and I'm going quickly here because I know that we've got very little time left. Just look at that pattern of isolation. Gaza is surrounded by people who are either indifferent to it or hostile to it, and that includes the Palestine Authority. Have you heard anything from Mahmoud Abbas? They have betrayed the people of Gaza again and again. They do not trust the Palestine Authority. They are just in league with Israel and the US. Saudi Arabia, forget it. Egypt, equivocal. They can be a negotiating partner, that's about it. But they haven't helped. They haven't helped at the Rafah crossing, although we have heard that some medical tents have been put up in Sinai who may deal with some casualties from Gaza. But that's about it. Hamas, once again, a bit equivocal, because Hamas is dictatorial. It is problematic in many ways like that on the population, but it has brought a kind of order. You cannot ignore that, and a kind of motivational centrality because of its own version of resistance. I emphasize here, I am not advocating anything here. I'm hoping simply to describe it. Turkey has been helpful in the past. Qatar has poured in money. UNRWA has given extraordinary support over the years, and of course in its schooling system has now become a refuge, as it was in 2014. But Gaza is isolated. This is its normal condition. How can we rebalance that so that it is less isolated? Ruins are normal. 126,600 homes totally destroyed. Rainwater is, there's a shortage of drinking water, and it's 97% unfit for use. I'm sure you know that. 85% of families with children live below the poverty line, and that is before there are any invasions. That poverty level is normal. How is that going to be rebalanced and changed? Extreme poverty has meant that children entering virtual education classes are extremely limited in their numbers. They, of course, are also having to don't forget, they're put up with the problems created by COVID-19. So this is, the bombings on top of that. A quick word about education. Education is a form of resistance because it is seen as a way of escaping from the isolation. It is something of an agent of hope for this population. But the children are denied it. They are very often having to go out and work for their families in the streets instead of being educated. We have, therefore, a situation where there is a feeling of despair, but the thing that has to pop up occasionally, because if you're human, it does, is a feeling of hope. Now, between those two blocks, you've got something we call resilience, and we want to look at how that is enhanced by really the work that we do, everybody here at the conference. We want to support this family, like this lot, who are simply trying to work from day to day. An organization like Medical Aid for Palestinians is doing that heroically, and they need to be supported. I want to draw your attention to a figure from the past, really, and maybe he will be revived in some sense, and that is Handala, somebody who is a cartoon figure. Look at him standing on the left with his hands behind his back, looking towards the very symbol of Islamic and Palestinian identity, here drawn as the Dome on the Rock, but the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which was stormed. Don't underestimate the importance of that event because of its symbol as an aim for freedom, and identity as a Muslim and as a Palestinian. And there is Handala, defiant, poor, as you can see by his rags and bare feet, and patient. He will wait. He will endure. He will be resilient in some sense like that. And the picture of the boy on the right was taken in 2014 by one of our team. He's injured, but he's defiant. The Great March of Return, briefly. Well, was it a success? It was a heroic effort. We're not going into the details of that today. But as an example of non-violent resistance, I think it is a hugely important example, and somebody should write a book about it, as they have about the First Intifada, which was equally important as an example of non-violent resistance. At least we can say that the Palestinians have that to look back on with some sort of pride. But, and here is the big but, and I'm going to ask Mohamed about this. We're now looking today at what is happening, at the destruction of the tower blocks, which means that thousands of families are now destitute. How are they going to manage over the next weeks and months? Of course, there are these terrible injuries and deaths. And so the question arises, if we have resistance, if you fire rockets, if you run up to the fence in Gaza and protest and get shot at, and you get shot at if you're disabled, if you are a medical worker, or if you are a journalist, doesn't matter who you are. Is the cost too great? I wonder, Mohamed, if you could say something about that.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think this is an important point. If we go back to 2000, all this resistance and for the Palestinians across the generation, and if we focus on Gaza especially, from 2008 war and 2012 and 2014 and now, the world should know and get the message of that. They make this noise. They can't fight the Israeli. There's no comparison between the different balance and different level of power. The Palestinians, they just want to make a noise to say we are not going to die in silence. We are here. We want to live in dignity and freedom. And the world, they should take this message. We are not want our children to be die like this. And if you look to the attack, what is on the earth now, the Israeli doing this? And when you listen to the Israeli, the American president and the French president, they said, the first thing they said, in light of this, Israel has the right to defend itself. Is that justice? What's about the Palestinian? What is the core of the problem? Why the Palestinians make this noise for resistance? Why they are resistance to their occupation? And they have the right to resist the occupation. They can't die in silence. This is what is happening there. And the world now should wake up and take this message. Because I said this is in front of the conference, where there's some Israeli was at that conference in 2000, maybe 6 in Berwick University in London. Look, if the Israeli keep killing the Palestinians in this bad way, in this criminal and terrorist way, do you think all this generation, where you will go? Now there's America back you up and some other countries, but what will happen in the future if this is carry on for how long? So this is the message need the world, stop the occupation and study why this is happening, not the result, the root of the problem.
And we have hope, which will be a light that fades sometimes and gets bigger sometimes. That's what I mean. It will never go away if you're human, but I will not lose it despite all this darkness surrounding me. I want to look at the subject of hope, and very briefly, I realize that we're almost at 11 o'clock, but we did start a little bit late. I hope I can have an extra 2 minutes. Jabotinsky was a thinker in the 1920s who spoke for the Zionist cause. As long as there is a spark of hope that they, the Arabs, can get rid of us Zionists, they will not sell these hopes. A living people makes such enormous concessions on such fatal questions only when there is no hope left. The aim is to destroy hope. Now, I think we all know that that is humanly impossible, but this is still the aim, and it is coming out in actually quite hysterical language from the Israeli side when they talk about what we want is complete silence in Gaza and things like that. I mean, it is hysterical. What they want to produce is something called learned helplessness, this total submission. Yet another fantasy, really. Destroy the capacity to resist by breaking down these two things: personal identity, remember Al-Aqsa, please, personal identity, and any sense of belonging to a community. Now, I won't go into the homeostasis point because we haven't got time, but it is to do with producing a psychological response to the Jabotinsky idea. And this is what I have presented here as a point about violence. We have to address violence. Once again, I repeat, we're not advocating or endorsing violence. We are trying to describe what lies behind it. And you will see that there's a kind of balancing process going on. If Israel is out to produce learned helplessness through the bombing, then the Hamas rockets are there to restore pride. It's a balancing effect. If Israel is out to dehumanize the people of Gaza by making the killings inconsequential, so it doesn't matter who you kill, children, whatever, then Hamas is going to defend any symbols of identity and humanity, not just Hamas, anybody else who is engaging in resistance here. If the aim is to fragment community, then you will probably create a sense of community through resistance, inspiring collective action through something like the sending of rockets. Now, I am not saying again that I am approving of rockets or anything like that. It is important, however, to understand what lies behind them. Maybe there are alternative ways of producing the same effects, I don't know, but it's important to understand. It reflects the thoughts of Frantz Fanon, and I'm sure that most of you know about him. Everything boils down to a simple choice. Will you be crushed, in his word, or will you dream of muscular prowess, which is a kind of resistance, so that the oppressor's glance no longer shrivels me up nor freezes me, and his voice no longer turns me into stone. Very powerful and very important to remember. In family therapy, we want to empower the family through peaceful means in order to recreate the normality of a parent feeling they can cope. Coming back to Ibrahim's point earlier, the focusing project is empowering the individual to become their own therapist and therefore retrieve a sense of identity and empowerment. The work done in the streets with children is there to change the meaning of the streets, in the words of one of our therapists, so that the streets are no longer places of despair and rubble, but places of joy, where bringing a smile to the faces of the children is giving them a sense of resisting, if you like, rebalancing the awfulness that has been imposed on them. So that is PTC saying that what it does is in cooperation with a feeling of resistance. And that extends to the therapists. There they are at PTC in Gaza. And on the screens, you can see the UK team who are there to connect with them. Remember the diagram on isolation, because what we should all be doing here is looking for ways of building attachment where there is isolation and trust where there is betrayal. If you're going to go in to help the Palestinians, you are not going to be tourists, because if you're a tourist, you will do no good. You're in there and you're not leaving. You are there to support them through thick and thin, as they say. Thank you very much. Mohamed, do you want to say a last word? Or Nagam?
No, this one. Nagam, you want to say anything? Just the last picture is to show the resilience, which is like, no matter how we are physically or the attack is there is very severe, but we keep a resistance to like resist and to exist and to have the resilience. So that now the people, they want, not after this, all this suffering, just now, just stop, okay, and then after that, they don't want the people in Palestine to keep suffering in silence. They want this to change. And now when people said, stop this, and okay, stop this, they should ask the Israeli side to stop their attack and their criminal acts against the Palestinians. That's now the people, they need to understand, and hopefully more people, they will support. I think the people in London, when people in Gaza see and watch the demonstration, they feel like they are not alone. There's some good, kind heart in this world still supporting their cause, the cause of freedom, the cause of justice and dignity. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for this wholeheartedly for this very powerful presentation, and it was great to hear some voices from Gaza as well, from the team in Gaza. So thank you so much for this, and I'm very happy now to pass over to Diana to introduce our next speaker.
I've got a little question for David before I introduce the next speaker. We've had a couple of people who are really interested in your slides. They thought they were amazing and they would love to share them. I will just take this moment to say that we are recording this whole conference and the recordings will be up later and shared later. But we were just wondering if you would be happy to share your slides with us, David. Fantastic. That's great. I see you nodding. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Great. So I will just bear with me a second while I promote our next.
Were there any other? There were no other questions, Diana, because we've got 10 minutes. We've got just under 10 minutes for questions.
Right, we've got a couple of, and Harry has not joined yet. Our next speaker, Harry Fear. So I would just like to, if you don't mind, say that what I thought was most powerful, David, what you said about building attachment where there's isolation, that really struck home and was a really strong point. So thank you so much for that. Again, super fantastic. Lots of people commenting that they really appreciated the voices from Gaza. So Ibrahim, Omar, thank you so much for that. Ibrahim, I've got a question for you because you touched on it, and I think it's a point that's very accessible, relatable to everyone worldwide. But can you expand a bit? I remember reading an article on what you talked about by a mother in Gaza about exactly that, having to decide every night whether to put all your children in the same bedroom, you know, so that everyone can hopefully survive the night together or spread them out. And just, I can't even imagine having to make a decision like that. And you also touched briefly on, you know, the impact on the relationships, how hard that must be as parents. So would you mind expanding a little bit more on that? I know it's a really tough topic, but again, it's one that I feel like a lot of people are relating to as parents, as family members.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, as you said, and as I said, it's a hard and tough decision. From what we saw through these 4 days, a number of families fully drop from the civilian registry. All of them are die. All the mother now, they think, okay, at least maybe if we are lived or if we go to bed in different rooms, maybe at least we have increased our chance. At least one of us will be lived. This is the mother tongue each night. Maybe I work with some journalists, maybe your guest Harry Fear, I work with him 2014. This is the question we heard from 2014. This is all the journalists hear the same question. As we saw today in the beach camp, they bombed families. All of them are dead. Just only a small girl, 11 months, they are the only one who lived. They were not at the same room. This is why all the mothers think about this. At least one of us should be lived. The other things now, this is the new breaking news. More than 1,000 families found them homeless, and the UNRWA opened the doors for them. They are living in the UNRWA now schools. So the situation and this very important topics, and the media must focus on it.
Thank you so much for that. We've got a question coming in from Martin Kemp. Could Ibrahim say something about how people are seeing the current situation in comparison with the earlier assaults on Gaza? What difference does it make that there's resistance in 48 towns and cities taking place?
Yeah, as I said before 1 hour with Dr. Mohamed, this war suddenly coming. And what we saw, it surprised us and surprised the Israeli. They are not planning for attacking, so they attack everything. There is no any targeting or clear target. They attack civilians. This is what a difference between 2014, 2012, and now. 2014, they have a bank of targets, but now they are attacking everything. Nothing, here in my family, my mother slept on my brother's house because we are lived in the east and he live in the west, and somehow their home more safe. But my father is alone. My sister came here with us. So the situation is not normal. We are facing huge and heavy and crimes here in Gaza. They are using a phosphor. They are attacking everything. If you see the last update coming from Gaza, more than 139 person getting killed. Most of them women and children. So no one safe here in Gaza now.
That's really heartbreaking. I think we've still got David. David, can I ask you to pop back on? We've had some questions about learned helplessness. Would you mind sort of expanding on that in the context of Gaza?
I have a feeling that learned helplessness will be explained in Harry Fear's film. I don't know if he's here, he might confirm that. But I recommend that when you look at that film, you will have it explained.
Great. Just while we wait for Harry, does anyone want to, it sounds like you've all worked with him. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with him? In what context do you work together?
With who, sorry?
Harry Fear?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've never met him.
But I think Ibrahim has. And Mohamed.
Yes, I worked. Yeah, I worked with him in 2014 as a translator. We did a lot of amazing things, and we spent some days we are breaking our fast with the chocolate. Yeah, he has keep some Snickers and some chocolates, and we break our fast with this chocolate. Yeah, we face some terrible situation, especially when we go to cover what happens in northern of Gaza. He was brave. We did a great job here in Gaza. I wish we can do it together soon.
Fantastic. Have you got anything to add to that, Mohamed?
Harry Fear, I think he's one of the activists and good and smart, creative journalist. And I think with his voice and the way they're producing some films to show what is going on in Palestine, it's very important. So I didn't meet him in person, but always I contact him by the phone, and always he has this lovely energy. He wants to do something, And for us as a Palestinian, we are hugely evaluate when we meet this kind of people, really, with this passion and with this, they want, it's not just work. They want to do something really to help as a humans. And I think we appreciate these people. And I think Harifir, one of these voices, they're looking for to let the voice of people in Palestine, the depressed, oppressed people, to be heard outside Palestine. This is the message we need this more. We really desperate the Palestinian to be our voice to be here. This is what is going on now. And if you ask the children now in Gaza, do you want to stop this? You resistant? They said no. If we don't have this freedom, what is the point? Why all this sacrification and this we paid? That's a huge, as David mentioned, huge price. And now at the end of it, they will keep the siege on Gaza. What is, when I contact my family, there is better to die if we coming back the same square. We are under oppression, under siege, under dehumanize us. What is the point now? It's better to die in dignity. So now that's now the people. I know it's horrific. I'm now out of Gaza, but this is my feeling. When I spoke to my brother in the morning, he said, how are you? How are you doing? How is your children? They said, he's got 7 children. And he said, I split them in 3 groups. I said, what you did? They said, I sent every group in different place. And he said to me, my dad, remind him when we have the first intifada, don't become in one car. Come to me in one car or go to somewhere in one car. Because if some bad things happen, which I don't want to lose all of you. So this is the same, my brother, he's doing this recommendation and advice from my dad, he's passed away, and he just split his children into groups in different places, just in case if they attack his house. Because the Israeli, as Ibrahim mentioned, they attack everywhere, just to feel like they are secure. This is not good. This is my message to the Israeli. This is what they are doing, like terrorist attack against the Palestinians is not to bring any security to them. I said to them directly in some places, in some conferences, this is the message. You need to give the Palestinians their right. And every generation come, they are not going to compromise. This is just the minimum for Palestine to have independent state in Gaza and West Bank and East Jerusalem. But now some Palestinians said, we don't need even this. We need the whole historical Palestine, because the Israeli kill the dream of the Palestinian. So hopefully they will listen to this message. Otherwise, the new generation come, they will say no negotiation. They kill us, they murder us all this time. And now the people come and say, stop. What they want from the Palestinian, to die in silence? No, they will die with some noise, for noise of freedom, to bring freedom and justice.
Thank you so much for that.